Hello and welcome to the Big Time Strength Podcast, featuring small school strength coaches from around the nation that are making the big time where they are at. This episode is brought to you by TeamBuildr. TeamBuildr is the software for strength and conditioning coaches. Join the thousands of coaches that log into TeamBuildr every day to write training programs, build questionnaires, and access and track athlete data. TeamBuildr is compatible with mobile devices, laptops, tablets, and TVs, which makes it the perfect software for any setting. If you sign up with code BIGTIME, you will receive a 25% discount on the Sports Science Certification course. Build the foundational skills necessary to manage data and learn how to transform that data into actionable assets for your program. You will also receive a free 10-week football programming template, which works automatically within your TeamBuildr 14-day free trial. No more spreadsheets and workout cards to track training maxes that change day by day, especially during breaks. Head to TeamBuildr.com and sign up with code BIGTIME to save time and paper today. This episode is also brought to you by PowerLift. Taking your athletic facility from concept to completion can be a challenge. At PowerLift, it is our goal to make the process as seamless as possible from start to finish. Our weight equipment is made from the toughest material that can withstand excessive use from coaches and athletes. It's sought after for its unique design, customizable appearance, affordability, and our superior warranty that training facilities want and need. Our weight rooms are designed with the athlete in mind, and we pride ourselves on our ability to outfit athletic facilities based on a team's unique goals. That's why high schools, colleges, universities, professional sports teams, and athletic performance facilities around the world have chosen us to help maximize their strength training facilities. Call us today to be contacted with a rep in your area, and give us a follow on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter to see for yourself why our clients are PowerLift proud. Our last sponsor is Vitruve. Vitruve is a velocity-based training system designed for colleges and high schools around the world. It is accurate, reliable, and affordable. The software is quick and easy to set up and use with a whole room of athletes simultaneously. Coaches have chosen Vitruve because it simplifies VBT and allows them to seamlessly integrate it on a daily basis. Check out Vitruve now for your school's free demo unit. Now let's get to this week's episode. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Big Time Strength Podcast. Today, I have a guest that's not your normal guest. He's not a coach, but man, he coaches the coaches. He coaches teachers, and he's in school districts around the nation. I'm excited to bring Jeff Kluever on to talk about Character Counts, which is based out of Iowa. They're actually within the Drake University campus. That's where their office is at. And he can explain a little bit more of how that works and how they're connected to the university. But super excited to have him on. And he's going to be talking about what many of us strength coaches are doing every day with our student athletes and trying to make an impact in our student athletes' lives. So welcome to the show, Jeff.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Hey, to open us up, can you give us some background, where you're from and how you got to where you're at?
Sure. So I am a graduate of Norwalk High School here in central Iowa. Went to Grinnell College and got my bachelor's degree in history and an initial teaching license. Came back to Norwalk and was actually a high school football coach and a substitute teacher in the Norwalk School District for a couple years. Before I decided that I preferred coaching to teaching. And so went and was an intern, I guess, at Wartburg College for a season with their football team. And then was a graduate assistant football coach at Carroll University for a couple years and got my master's degree in curriculum instruction done up there. And when I finished as a graduate assistant, I made the very normal transition from college football coach to museum director. That was my next job, was as the executive director of the Allen County Historical Society, a small museum in Kansas. Then was the education supervisor at a Civil War battlefield in Virginia. And then my wife and I determined that we're not really very good at living on the East Coast. Monday Night Football ends on Tuesday mornings out there, and I was too old to stay up for it. So we moved back to the Midwest, and I've been with the Ray Center now for the last 7 years.
That's awesome. And it's awesome to be able to get out of kind of the Midwest and see things and bring that experience back. Is there anything that stands out to with your time in the East Coast and maybe some of the things that you learned there?
Well, I mean, we moved out there for my work, I am a Civil War buff. History is my deal. It is my passion. It's the thing that I will read books about until I die, no matter what my job is. And so working on a Civil War battlefield, being in that area of the country, I knew that that the history was everywhere. But once you're there, like, you literally cannot escape it. We drove by 3 Civil War monuments on the way to the grocery store. And so it was unique to see how pervasive it was. And I think that is true everywhere, but it's just not emphasized everywhere. And now being back in Iowa, that's sort of one of my little side projects in life, is to try and emphasize the history that is around us in Iowa, because it's here too. We just don't talk about it nearly as much as other places do. So that was something that I took away from that experience and moving around a little bit, is that we could do a little better job here in Iowa of telling our own story.
That's great. So kind of hopping into this show, this Big Time Strength podcast, we're trying to have strength coaches around the nation make impacts on their athletes in a positive way, making the big time where they're at. And one of the things that excited me about hopping on this call with you is I believe that you can help so many coaches do that. What would you say, to open up here, what are some of the things that you get to do on a daily basis, and how are you helping school districts around the nation?
Sure. So the mission of the Robert D. and Billie Ray Center at Drake University is to improve civility through character development and ethical leadership. And we do that in a variety of arenas. We do that in early childhood education, in K-12 education, in athletics and activities, in workplace professional development. And no matter what the arena is, we are trying to do the same thing. We are trying to help leaders, be they teachers or managers or supervisors or educators or coaches. We're trying to help leaders shape the culture of their organization or their team or their classroom or whatever the case may be. Help leaders shape culture, help them develop character skills with their kids or their employees in a workplace setting so that they can deliver the performances needed. And the research is very clear on this. If you can shape culture, if you can develop character, you are more likely to get the performance that you want. And so this is true in any one of those arenas. There are different performance standards in a classroom than in a business than on an athletic field, but whatever performance you are going after, you're more likely to get if you can shape the culture and if you can positively impact character. And so our role at the Ray Center is to provide tools and strategies and resources and ways to help those leaders do that work. Because the reality is every coach, every teacher is already establishing a culture, whether you mean to or not, that is happening. We just want to help you do it faster, help you do it better, help you do it more consistently. Because in addition to shaping that culture, you also are trying to teach the skills, the weight room skills, the running skills, the conditioning skills, the history skills if you're in a classroom. So if we can help you be more effective and more efficient on the culture shaping side, then that's a win for everybody.
And that's something that has got me excited here is just trying to figure out like a systematic way to do that. And you guys have developed a few different lines of curriculum and different things that you can do to implement within the classroom. What does that look like? And what are some of the things that you're most excited about with that?
So our process really starts the same, no matter the situation. Your culture is built on values. And so we start with that part of the conversation, or what are your values for your classroom, for your school, for your athletic team, for your weight room, whatever the situation may be. As character counts, our values are the 6 pillars of character: trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, fairness, caring, and citizenship. And we have the 6 pillars of character, not because those values are better than everybody else's values. It's not a competition. We're not saying that your values don't matter, you have to choose ours. They're certainly not exclusive or anything like that. We use those values and we find them helpful because they're universal. In all of my years of talking about character counts, I've yet to have anyone say, actually, I would prefer if my kids were less respectful. Can we get rid of that one? I'm not interested in, I don't want them to be trustworthy. So the pillars have value because no matter what context we are in, we would like more of those things. But having said that, you can choose whatever values that you want. And I talk to schools and athletic teams about this all the time. You know your kids, you know your communities, you know your teams better than I ever will. So choosing those values should be should be custom. It should be to your fit. It should be to who you are and who you want to be. But the intentionality of choosing those values is critical, because if you don't intentionally choose them, then you impulsively choose them. The impulsive side of us as human beings is typically we choose what is easiest or most convenient or what is most emotionally satisfying at the time, which sometimes works out, but oftentimes it doesn't. If we choose intentional values, then we say, this is who we are, this is what we do, this is how we do it, this is how we make decisions. And when we have that intentionality behind our values, then we can start to shape our culture around those values. Once those values are chosen, now it's up to us to figure out, and this is the framework we use with the Character Counts. It's up to us to figure out how we're going to teach, enforce, advocate, and model those values. TEAM is the acronym: teach, enforce, advocate, and model. And that's where we can then start to break down the strategies and say, okay, what are the different ways we can do this? What are the different resources available to help you? But you have to do those 4 things. How are we teaching these values? How are we enforcing the values? How are we advocating for them? And how are we ourselves modeling them? Because that's where you can start to shape culture.
So if a coach was interested in, like going through some of this curriculum or figuring out what fits what they've started to develop at their school district or whatever, what would the steps be that they would take to reach out and to get the conversation started?
Yeah, so it's pretty easy to find us. If you go to charactercounts.org, that's the Character Counts website. That's an easy place to reach us. You can also just email us directly. We're a small organization, so if you email Ray Center at drake.edu, you will get, that's just our general email inbox. Or you can email me directly. My email is Jeff.Kluever, Kluever at drake.edu. That's the easiest way to sort of get in touch with us. And we like to start with those conversations. You can go on the Character Count store and order materials and things like that. But we like to start with conversations because we can make recommendations based on what you tell us. Because not everyone needs every single thing. And we want to try and help people integrate into what they are already doing some additional strategies. Because most teachers, most coaches are already doing stuff that works. There's no reason to stop doing stuff that works. We want to try and enhance it. We want to try and supplement it. We want to try and add to it. And that's where I think we can provide value, is in having those conversations with folks to say, where are you right now? Where is it that you're trying to go? What are the things you're currently doing? And then we can try and help you fill the gaps, whether that's with professional development workshops or assessments or resources or any number of other things that can help you build and fill the gaps that you might have.
Yeah, something that stands out to me, in relation to that is just your TEAM acronym, and like being able to go through that and seeing if a program or a coach in general is using each piece of that. And I think just having that conversation is such a big deal. Could you dive into that just a little bit more, the teaching, the evaluation, and so on, all the way through?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm actually going to go backwards. I'm going to start with the model part of TEAM. And this is the same thing we do in our professional developments. We start with the model because I don't care how well you are teaching it, enforcing and advocating it. If you're not living your own values, the kids know that. They are perceptive. And they will see well, this can't really matter because Coach X and Coach Y or Teacher X or Teacher Y, they're not doing it. So it can't actually be that important. So we always start with our model piece, because you will never be, your culture will never be what you are not. You can't have a culture of responsibility if you are not responsible. You're a part of the culture. You're a leader of the culture as the coach. So your culture will never be better than you are. You've got to sort of set the standard and set the example. That doesn't mean you have to be perfect. None of us are perfect. We're going to mess up. But even in the messing up, are we modeling how to make the mistake, how to own the mistake, how to recover from the mistake? We are showing kids that example all of the time. And we talk a lot about, as a coach, as a teacher, you don't get to choose when you are leading. You don't get to choose under what circumstances you are leading. You don't get to choose who you are leading. The only choice you get is how you are leading. On your best days, on your worst days, kids are looking at you and you are providing an example. So what example are you providing? The other thing that is important to remember about model, and it's why we start with model, is it doesn't cost anything. You don't need to purchase any resources. You don't need to invest in a new degree or another certificate. Like, this is just a choice that I get to make in every moment of every day. Am I going to demonstrate my values, or am I not going to demonstrate my values? Am I going to make a decision based on my values, or am I not going to make a decision based on my values? And the more that we can do that from a modeling perspective, the more our kids see it, and the more receptive our kids will be to the teaching, the enforcing, and the advocate part of it, if we're modeling ourselves. The advocate piece is really about explaining the why. If you can't explain why demonstrating this character trait or why demonstrating this value matters, then why should I do it? If I don't understand why being responsible, why having a great work ethic, why being a good teammate, why any of these things matter, if I don't believe that it matters, beliefs inform behaviors. So if I don't believe it, I'm not likely to do it. So it's up to us to be advocating for why these things matter. And part of that advocacy is understanding who all of our stakeholders are. As a strength and conditioning coach, your stakeholders are the kids. Your stakeholders are the coaches whose programs you're working with. Your stakeholders are parents who are involved in this process to less and more degrees, depending on the parent. All of us have to have some understanding of why we do the things that we do, why we are talking about the values that we have, why we're trying to teach and enforce and advocate these things. And so that's really where we try and go with advocate, is we have to understand why it matters, and we have to communicate why it matters so that people will start to believe it, because beliefs will drive the behaviors. Enforce is fairly explanatory. If you don't enforce the standards that you have, then people will not live to the standards. I was a district substitute teacher. So I was hired by the same school district to do substitute teaching in that district every single day. And I could go into the same school building with the exact same kids and have a radically different experience on Monday than I did on Tuesday. I could go into teacher X's classroom on Monday, have a great day. It was awesome. Kids walked in, they just knew what to do. They sat down, they set they followed the guidelines. They did what was on the board. It was awesome. And Tuesday, exact same kids, exact same school, exact same building, awful day. They come in, they run around, they're total pains in the butt. The difference was the culture that the teacher had created, the expectations that the teacher had created. The kids will rise and fall to whatever levels we set. So how do we enforce those expectations with consistency? And we talk a lot about defining our values as behaviors, and that being a key part of enforcement. Values can sometimes be a little bit vague. Work ethic. Well, what's that mean? Like what I think work ethic looks like might not be what you think work ethic looks like. Respect. What I think respect looks like, you might not agree if that's what respect looks like. So we have to have definition of what it is in different circumstances. And then we have to have consistency in application so that kids will know what that standard is and stay with it. And then finally, the teach component is really where you get a lot more variance and customization just based on the different environments. How you teach those values in a weight room is going to be different than I would do in my history classroom. Might be different than how I would do it as a football coach. Might be different than how I would do it as a manager at a workplace. But you still do have to teach. What do we mean when we say that? And I'm going to throw another acronym at you, and we can dive deeply into this. But when we talk about teach, we use the CHAMP acronym to help us think about teach. CHAMP stands for clarity, habits, accountability, mindset. And if you do those 4 things, you get performance. So CHAMP, performance. So when we're talking about teach, the clarity is, what do we mean when we say that? So whatever your value is, whatever performance you are looking for, we're looking for our kids to be more respectful. We're looking for our kids to work harder. We're looking for our kids to be trustworthy. Whatever that performance is. Clarity, what do I mean when I say that? Habits, what does it look like? Mindset, why does it matter? And then accountability, how am I holding them to that standard? If I can address those 4 areas, then I can teach that or coach that skill well. So we spend days and days and days on workshops diving. I mean, I can do each letter of team in 5 minutes, and I can do each letter of team in a 2-hour block. But that's sort of the gist of what we go with each one of those.
That's really awesome. And like you said, diving into the teach portion, that is going to be customized to your environment, right? If you're a teacher, you're a coach, or you're more specifically a strength coach. Would you like to go a little bit deeper into what it looks like for clarity, habits, accountability, mindset, and performance?
Yeah,
we don't have to spend
absolutely.
a ton of time, but if you want to, I think that'd be an awesome way for coaches to come away from this podcast with some application.
Absolutely. So Pete Carroll says, if you don't coach your values every day, they're not your values. It's just stuff you say. So this is where CHAMP becomes important, because this helps you think about how you're going to teach it. So the example I'll use is from my coaching days. It's not a strength and conditioning example, but when I was coaching football, I would yell, play fast, like 50 times a practice. I was always telling my kids, like, hey, we got to go. Let's go. Play fast, play fast, play fast. And if you would have asked my 15 defensive linemen what I meant when I said play fast, you would have got 15 different answers. Because I didn't coach it. I didn't teach it. I just said it a lot. And so my seniors sort of understood what I meant because they had like deductively reasoned, like, okay, coach said play fast. I did this. He yelled at me, so it's not that one. Coach said play fast. I did this. He said good job, so it must be that. Which is not a very efficient way for my kids to learn what I meant when I said play fast. So what I did is I sat down and said, okay, let's use this CHAMP process to actually think about how to coach my value of play fast. And what I realized is that when I did the clarity box, what do I mean when I say it? That's the question with clarity. What does play fast mean for us as defensive linemen on the Carroll University football team? What's that mean? Clarity. It meant 2 things for me. And I don't even think I had realized this until I started to do it. There was a physical component of play fast, which was, I want you to run. Like, we are going to give 100% effort. We are going to sprint to everything. That's play fast. That's what I mean when I say play fast. But what I didn't really talk about or conceptualize until I started thinking through this process is there was a mental aspect of play fast too, that I was implying, but I wasn't teaching or coaching. And so that part was, I boiled it down to clear minds equal fast feet. The easiest way for my kids to be able to do everything fast is if they were not thinking. On a football field, thinking is slow, reacting is fast. So clarity, when I said play fast, I was talking about 2 things. I need you to run. I need you to physically exert lots of effort. And number 2, I need you to know what you are doing so you don't have to think. That's what clarity was of my value of play fast. Run, know what you're doing. Well, once I had identified that as clarity, I could teach that to my kids. Now they knew, now they understood, like, oh, he does want us to run everywhere. We got that part. And he also wants us to know what we're doing so that we're not slow in our process. So that was my clarity box. Then I moved over to habits and said, okay, what does it look like to play fast? And I started thinking, well, if there's both a physical and a mental component in the clarity box, there's probably a physical and mental component in the habits box too. So my physical habit, what does it look like to play fast out on the practice field, was touch every pile. So in football, right, we're playing defense. You make the tackle, there's a pile at the end of the play. And so our rule was you got to run to the ball, like you have to get there. And so touching the pile meant you either made the tackle, great, that's touching the pile. You didn't make the tackle, you didn't start the tackle, but you're going to help finish the tackle, that's a way to touch the pile. You are late to the play, like you were coming all the way across the field, so the play is over by the time you get there. You're not going to hit anybody late, that's not good. But you're going to help your buddies off the pile, that's the way that you can touch it. Or if you're my big 315-pound defensive tackle and you didn't get there until the very end, you can celebrate with your teammate, give them a high five. That's how you're going to touch the pile. But the point is, you are running to the ball every single play. That's what play fast looks like. Habits. It's the action part of it. Then I had a mental part of it too, which was you need to watch 30 minutes of film every day. That's how you get clear minds. If you are in here every day, that's the action I want you to take. In here every day, watching 30 minutes of film. We're going to teach off of the tape so that you can play on the run. That's what we want to get after. So clarity, they knew what it meant. Habits, they knew what it looked like. Touch the pile, and we're going to watch 30 minutes of film every day. The mindset piece is a little bit like, what do I want running through their brains? What do I want them thinking about this value? So for this, this was back in the early 2000s. There was the Shakira song, Hips Don't Lie. And so that was our mindset, hips don't lie. Because as defensive linemen, 90% of what we did was follow the offensive lineman's hip. If it went to our right, we chased it to the right. If it went to our left, we chased it to the left. If it went backwards, we chased it that way. And if it stepped at us, we stepped at it. That was basically what we did. So the mindset of playing fast was hips don't lie. Just run after it. You don't have to think, just react. And that worked really well for us because I knew it was taking hold when I was hearing my kids out on the field, like they'd start to stress out and they'd start to, overthink things, and their teammate would come up to them and say, hey, stop, hips don't lie. If it goes this way, chase it. If it goes this way, chase it. If it goes this way, chase it. If it steps at you, step at it, easy. And then we had 2 accountability measures. One was we filmed everything. So it was easy for me to just watch practice and be like, yeah, touch the pile. Yes, touch the pile. Yes, touch the pile. Yes, touch the pile. I could see if they were doing the habits or not. And then the other piece was we would just do quick little reflections. So if we were having a post-practice, stretch or something, they're out there getting their last 5 minutes of cool down. We could talk about like, hey, on a scale of 1 to 10, how'd you do this? How'd you do that? Where'd you feel like you were today? To make sure that they were on pace. And that's one helpful hint is if people are using this CHAMP framework, a lot of times people will try and hold their kids accountable to the value. Again, values are more vague. I always tell people, hold them accountable to the behaviors. So whatever you wrote in that habit box, in my case, the habits were touch every pile and watch 30 minutes of tape. That's what I'm going to hold them accountable to. If they are performing those behaviors, then they are going to be demonstrating the value. It makes it a little bit more concrete and easy for them to see. And I just like that CHAMP approach because it helped me as a coach. It helped me realize like I valued play fast. It means something to me, but all I did was say it a lot. I didn't coach it. I didn't teach it. I wasn't precise in what I meant on a day-to-day basis. And so I wasn't getting the performance that I wanted. I would get it sometimes, but not with consistency. If I wanted with consistency, then I have to teach it with consistency. I have to be clear about what I mean. I have to teach them what it looks like. I have to tell them why it matters, and I have to hold them accountable to the standards. And usually you're not bad at all of that. A lot of times you can go back and reflect after practice and be like, I'm not getting the performance that I want. Is it because I'm not holding them accountable? Is it because I'm not clear? Is it because they don't know what it looks like? Is it because they don't know why it matters? And it's usually because I'm deficient in just one of those things, not all of those things. And I can have a more targeted, understanding of how I can do it a little bit better.
That's what I was writing that down before you said it, is like, then once you get to the P of the champ, that performance, that's the diagnostics, that's the dashboard, right? Where if you're not getting the performance you want, then you go back through and say, okay, which one of these things am I failing at, right? Like that ownership and the coaching right there.
Yeah, absolutely. As a coach, you're not usually, unless your kids are just willfully disobeying you, you're not getting the performance because you're falling short in something. If they're putting forth great effort and they really care and they're invested and they're not getting the performance, it's probably because I'm not saying it right. I haven't found the right way to teach it yet. And this way helps me go back and evaluate where I might be able to improve.
Yeah, I like this. This is a really good thing for like an assessment, just from the coaching perspective, right? I feel like as I go through this and I assess my program, I feel like I do some of these things well. I like what you're really saying with the, if you don't define what the value actually looks like, then you're going to miss the mark, right? Like, we have to be able to define what that looks like. And that's the biggest thing, is like, when I tell the kids that we're going to control our attitude and effort, and what does it look like to actually have good attitude and actually have good effort, that's when the rubber meets the road. If we just say, like, the only things you control is your attitude and your effort, and coaches say that stuff all the time, but then they don't ever tell you what that should actually look like to control it. That's just interesting, and I think this is the next step. This is the next layer that people need to get to. And what has helped me, and I think this will be even more clarity along the way, because I can look at each one of those pieces a little bit more in depth.
Yeah, the definition helps in two ways. Number one, it helps with your kids, as you say, understanding it. But if you think about, as a strength and conditioning coach, you get athletes from all sorts of different sports, and you get athletes who are multi-sport athletes too. Well, sometimes they're getting different definitions from different coaches. What is perfectly acceptable attitude and effort for the soccer coach is not even close to acceptable attitude and effort in your weight room, and is sometimes acceptable attitude and effort for the basketball coach. So, this is where I think that it gets challenging is, coaches and programs want to have autonomy within their programs, which is perfectly understandable. I get that. But their kids' experience is just one long continuum. And so the more that we can be consistent collectively, the more impact that we can have. And that's not to say that every single sport program needs to have the exact same values, but especially as a strength and conditioning coach, because you are seeing all of these kids from all of these different places, you have an opportunity to provide consistency that the sport coaches don't always have, right? As a football coach, once we were done with October, like, I didn't see most of my kids, because then they were in wrestling, or they were in basketball, and then they were in spring sports, and I would see them in the weight room if I was in the weight room. But otherwise, like, the strength and conditioning piece is where that consistency really comes from. Even at the college level, when I was coaching there, almost all of our kids were single sport athletes at that level. We weren't allowed to see them by NCAA rule after the season was over, unless they came to us. It was the strength and conditioning coach who then really was responsible for extending our culture. And they had those kids considerably longer than I did. I only got them for 4 months. They were in the weight room for 8. So it was that consistency piece, that the definition helps in both. It helps with clarity and it helps with consistency. Because when you have assistant coaches, when you have multiple programs, when you have, some of your assistant coaches aren't even educators in the building. They are literally like running from their car at the end of the day and changing from a coat and tie into shorts and a t-shirt. Like, that helps them too, because they want to teach the right things. But that definition helps us all get on that same page, so that we can have the consistent application.
Yeah, that's awesome stuff. I really have enjoyed, breaking these couple acronyms down just to have usable stuff from the very beginning. And I want to downplay the rest of everything that character counts can do for a school district or a classroom or a strength coach or any of those things. So we'll make sure that we put all of this stuff in the show notes so that people have the opportunity to reach out and see if they can learn more. There's a lot of free resources on their website, and there's some paid stuff that is some really cool resources also. Before we move on, kind of get to the end of the show here, we have a final question that we normally ask strength coaches is like, how are you making the big time where you're at? But from your perspective, maybe it's a little bit different. Maybe it should be, how can you help coaches make the big time where they're at?
Yeah, I think for us, to me, the way that I would define big time is the way that your kids feel in your space, right? Do they feel important? Do they feel valued? Do they feel like they're being pushed and challenged, and are they being provided an opportunity to maximize their potential, whatever that is? I think that our role as Character Counts, as the Ray Center, is to help coaches create that type of culture where kids feel like they can maximize their potential. We talk a lot about, as educators, as coaches, we're not in the talent business, we're in the culture and character business. Now, that's only sometimes true. If you're a college coach and you can recruit and you can bring in talent, then of course you're looking for talent. But the rest of us who are just public school teachers who are not out recruiting, like, it's our job to take whoever walks in the door and help them be the best that they can possibly be. And it's awesome when they walk in the door with a ton of talent. Like, it's a heck of a lot easier to coach up kids who are 6'5" and run like a deer and all this stuff. But it doesn't matter. When I was coaching high school football, my job was to take literally anyone who walked through that door and help them be as good as they could possibly be. And so the only way to make that happen is to create that environment, that big time environment, if you want to use that phrase. And that's what we do. We help people shape that culture. We help you think about ways that you can form relationships. We help you think about ways that you can have your kids involved in defining your values. So, that what we just talked about, where we need to take our values, we need to break them down into behaviors. Like, there are activities where the kids participate in that so that they have an ownership of what that culture is. So they have told us, they have given us their own ideas on what it looks like and what it sounds like. We can help, with those types of activities. We have the assessment pieces so that coaches can go back and look like and say, okay, so here's parts of our big time environment that are going well. Like, this is working. Our kids feel good about this. Our staff feel good about this. Here's a part where we could probably pick it up a little bit. We're a little short on this particular aspect of it. We've got ways to, with ongoing support, to help, coach people through those individual moments, right? So it doesn't matter how good I am at a professional development. You're only going to remember about 10% of what I said. So we have resources where people can get us on consultation calls and just say, hey, here's something I'm working on. What do you think? Let's brainstorm this together. Let's try and figure this out. So our role is really to help coaches think about how they can create that environment. And I would say, from the highest level, it really is all about determining what your values are going to be, coaching them up every day, and then relationships are at the foundation of absolutely everything that we do. And I hear that from previous versions of the podcast. I've listened to panel discussions and other guests that you've had talk about the importance of building those relationships, and it cannot be emphasized enough that at the foundation of your culture are relationships. And the better, the stronger, the more consistent and sustained those relationships are, the easier it is to enhance and drive that culture forward. We talk a lot about culture will either enhance or corrupt the behaviors of the kids within that culture. The relationships will either enhance or corrupt that culture. So that is really sort of at the foundation of everything. And if you want to create that big time environment wherever you are at, it's great when you have the bells and the toys and the whistles and all that stuff. But what kids are going to remember when they walk away is, number one, how did you make them feel in that space? Did they feel like they were welcome, that they were cared about, that they were supported, that they were encouraged, that they were inspired? And number two, did you help them become as good as they could possibly get with whatever talent that they had? Not everyone's going to turn out to be a Division I athlete. I certainly was not. But did you get as much as you could out of what walked through the door? And I think kids recognize that. They're fairly perceptive. Like, they understand sort of, I'm not this kid. I'm not this tall. I'm not as fast. I'm not as strong. I'm not this. I'm not that. But I'm better than what I was. And if we can help them move on that and see that improvement, if they can start to believe that the work that they put in matters, I think that's where that big time environment really comes to fruition.
I think that's an awesome way to kind of tie that up, and from your perspective what that looks like. And earlier you mentioned a few ways that people could get a hold of you. Charactercounts.org, is that correct?
Yep.
And then Ray Center at drake.edu.
Yep.
And then I'll have those in the show notes. Is there anything else contact wise that they'll need to make sure that they get a hold of somebody at the Ray Center or you?
No, that's the best way to do it. If that Ray Center at drake.edu email will just come into our general system, and then it gets sent wherever it needs to get sent after that. But yeah, we just love to have conversations with people and see where we can help. And it's everything from the high school level to college athletics. We actually just finished, not finished. We're finishing phase 1, starting phase 2 of a project with NCAA women's basketball right now. So everything from the high school to the college athlete to youth sports and everything in between. We've got tools, we've got resources, we've got professional development that we can use to help you shape that culture that you need to get the performance outcomes that you want.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your effort with this, and I can't wait for this one to come out so everybody can listen and have the opportunity as they head into their new school year, figuring out what's it look like to create an environment for their kids in an awesome way so that their kids can, hopefully be the best that they can be the best version of themselves. So thanks, Jeff. I appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Pleasure being on.